Hi, I'm Fred Copestake, and I'm delighted to be with you at the Sales Secret Summit 2021. What's my sales secret going to be? Well, I'm going to talk about being more collaborative, and more specifically about how you can use partnering skills or PQ to achieve that. So why is this a top sales secret? Well, sales has changed. And if we don't change, if we don't keep up with it, well, the potential for failure is going to increase. And so how can you execute that secret today? How can you use some of the advice? Well, the first thing we're going to do is understand what are the challenges of modern selling. We're going to think about how sales has evolved and what we can take from some of these evolutions. But then we're going to understand what are the 6 elements of PQ, of partnering skills, and how we can use these in every selling interaction, whatever type of sale you're doing. So a little bit about myself. I'm founder of Brindis, sales training company. Over the last 22 years, I've been around the world 14 times. I've worked in 36 countries. I've worked with over 10,000 salespeople. And it's while doing that that I became really aware of what the challenges that the majority of these would be facing. There's quite a lot of commonality. And so I looked at these and thought, well, how can we address these? And that's what spurred me on to write the book, Selling Through Partnering Skills, where we look at these elements that we can use to become more modern in our approach by sharing and being more collaborative. So it's some of these things that I want to share with you now. So if we think about the challenges of modern selling, broadly they fall into 3 areas. I talk about busy, 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 oldie worldy, and muddled mindset. So busy, busy, busy is when a salesperson is running around doing lots of stuff, loads of activity, it's really hectic, lots of things going on, but it's not very effective. These things aren't making a difference. They're not having the impact that the salesperson is looking for. And as a result, they just do more of it. They get busier, they get more hectic. They waste time and they get more stressed. It's not a good place to be. So busy, 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 we see in a lot of different industries. Another thing we see is oldie worldy. And so oldie worldy is using old-fashioned techniques that don't really work. People are doing things from a bygone era that just aren't effective. And so this can actually make the busy, busy, busy effect even worse. By trying to use things that just don't have a place in modern sales anymore, you're putting more pressure on yourself. Potentially also you're going to be a little bit embarrassing because people will see through what are old-fashioned techniques and just not really appropriate for modern day. The other thing that we'll see, or potentially all 3 we see, is the muddled mindset. So muddled mindset is when a salesperson isn't really sure what they're supposed to be doing. It could be that they're positioned as a consultative salesperson, someone who's selling solution, they're looking at the customer's best interest. But all of a sudden, we come the end of the month, we come the end of the quarter, and it's try and sell more stuff, try and sell more things. We become really transactional. So the mindset is muddled as to what are we actually trying to do here? It's not clear on what we're trying to achieve. It puts salespeople in a really bad position, and it means that we're unlikely to get the results that we want, the outcomes that we're looking for. So we've got to look at how we can solve these, and all of them do have solutions. So if we look at busy, 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 it's about becoming more effective. This is about planning better, it's about preparing, and it's about using good process. It's really thinking about how are we going to approach our sale, how are we going to approach our activity, how are we going to manage ourselves to do things time and time again in a way that does make a difference. We can approach oldie worldy by getting more up to date. And this is all about flipping the sales approach. Flip it around so the focus is on the customer. Think about what they're trying to do, think about their buying journey, think about what they're trying to achieve. And so follow a process, follow a way of working that's going to put the focus like that. This is a more modern way of thinking, and this will be more effective. When we deal with the muddled mindset, by giving clarity. And this has really got to come from the top of the organization. They've got to be clear on what it is that we're actually trying to do, we're actually trying to achieve. If we can establish that, management can get far better at coaching. They can get far better at helping salespeople do what they really need to do to make a difference for the customer. And it means that the salesperson can be far more committed and far more consistent in the way that they operate in a way that's meaningful to the customers that we're trying to serve, that we're trying to work with. Those are broadly the challenges and how we can start to deal with it. And so really the way to do this is to look at how sales has evolved, because it has. Over a period of time, sales has been researched, it's been understood, and we can see ways in which modern salespeople can adapt and approach customers in a far more meaningful and useful way. So what I want to do is just take us back to have a look at some of the evolutions, because I believe that we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and completely change a sales approach. There's many things that we can take from times before because they're still relevant today. Some things, absolutely, yeah, we want to kick those out. It doesn't make any sense to do them. But some things will help us with a good, solid sales approach. So I'm going to go back to post-war. I'm not going to go right back to the 1890s, the days of the snake oil salespeople, which started to give us all kind of a bad name. But we'll look at sort of post-war, and we'll see how a lot of the sales approaches mirrored the general thinking of the time. And so in the 50s, where we're looking at kind of increasing production, it was all about having good, solid process. And that was exactly the same in the way that sales was trained. We'd want to have a good methodology, a good way of working, that we could do the right things time and time again. And actually, I'm not going to argue with that today. It makes a lot of sense. We want structures, we want processes, we want ways to make sure that we're doing things correctly. In the 60s, this was all about the kind of the mind, it was about the brain. I always think about it as kind of the psychedelia area. But that's what a lot of sales training looked at. It was trying to understand the buyer, their personality, how they would think, what their preferences were, and aligning ourselves to that. Flexing behavior and positioning products and services in a way that would be appealing to them. Why would we not want to do that now? Why would we not want to try and adapt our approach to the customer so that they feel comfortable in what we do? Totally want to do that. And if we think about what happened in the 70s, a lot of sales training was really to focus in on benefits, selling benefits. What's in it for me? That's the unspoken customer's question. So if we can really make sure that we're explaining those, for me, that still makes sense today. Customers don't say it, but quite often in their heads they're thinking, well, so what? So what? Why are you telling me this stuff? It doesn't make any sense. I'm not interested. We've got to make sure that we're not falling into that trap. Think about what they're going to get from buying the product or services. It's the famous, people don't buy a drill, they buy a hole. And actually, I think we could probably take that further again. They're not really buying a hole. Who wants a hole in the wall? It's what you're going to use the hole for. Maybe it's have a picture help with a memory, something like that. But think about what's in it for the customer. Now, the 80s is an interesting decade. I think from a sales point of view, there's some things that probably we do need to kick out. You know, the whole close, 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 ABC, always be closing, greed is good type mentality. Not so sure about that. However, sales is about making advancements. It's about getting commitment. It's moving to the next stage. And if we do take something from that era, it's that we do need to keep moving forward. We do need to keep a sale progressing. But really where we do need to be focused, and we can take a lot of stuff, is from the 90s. So in the 90s, this was where consultative selling really came to life. Focusing in on a customer's needs, asking good questions, understanding what the impact of doing something or not doing something might make somebody. And if we use those techniques today, they put us in a really good place for working better with customers, because it helps them to understand what it is we're trying to achieve. If we look at the noughties approach, where we took that stuff from the 90s but built on it even further to focus on value, again, that's something that I would say any modern salesperson would need to understand to be effective today, in today's environment, and how we need to sell to be most useful and most helpful to customers. In the 10s when I was training, I talked to people about building their sales stature. So they had to be considered the go-to person. They had to do things so that people would consider them the expert and the person that would be able to help them. Now we'd probably call that personal branding, and we'd be using social media and the various platforms just to project the image that, yes, we are someone who is able to help the customer. So yeah, that makes sense too. And in the 20s, this is all about collaborative selling. So I was setting up to talk about this pre-COVID. COVID comes along, lockdowns, all those changes, working from home, virtual selling, video exploding. But still for me, this is all about ways to be more collaborative. The collaborative selling approach is of our time. And there are just some extra tools or some thinking that we can use to get effective at it. So collaborative selling is what we want to be thinking about. And so PQ, or partnering skills, is something that can help that mindset, help that ethos. It comes from some research from a guy called Steve Dent, who back in the late 80s, early 90s, was looking at how large organizations were building business alliances. So he looked at this because they wanted to be more effective with them. Of course they did. But what he found out was, well, to cut a long story short, organizations don't partner, people do. It was the people skills and the people involved in these relationships that when they could interact properly, that was where they were getting the business benefits. So he codified and worked out what these skills are. And when I came across them, I thought, well, this makes sense to anybody in sales. Doesn't have to be a full-on business alliance, doesn't even need to be partnering and in channel. This is any person, any sale. If you have this as your mindset, it can set you up to being more collaborative in your approach and to be more effective in the way that we need to work today. There are 6 elements to PQ. And if we think about these, we can work out how we can use them to become more collaborative. So one of the elements, the element I usually start with, and they're all interrelated, but I always start with this, is trust. So trust is the foundation for relationships. Trust helps us communicate well. Trust helps us work better with people that we want to collaborate with. So we think about what are the things that we can do to build trust. How can we be more credible? How can we be more reliable? How can we be more intimate with people? In other words, do we know our stuff? Do we do what we say we're going to do? Are we safe with people's information? And are we doing this because we actually care about them and what they're trying to achieve, rather than just because we want to get our own intentions? The next element is win-win orientation, win-win focus. I mean, we've been talking about win-win in sales for a long time. So really understanding this and that mutual benefit makes a lot of sense when we talk about partnering and partnering skills. So it's working out what are people's expectations, how can we fulfill those, but how can we make sure that ours are satisfied too? It means that if there is conflict, if there's problem, if there's negotiations take place, we're more likely to be able to do that more effectively. So having a win-win focus really does help a professional seller. As does being comfortable with interdependence. Interdependence. Your success is going to be reliant on other people's success. So we need to be okay with that. So this could be your own teams. You're going to have to be successful in how they help you. It could be the customer. That is where we need to be reliant on others. And to some degree, we've got to give up a little bit of control. Yeah, we've got to include other people. We've got to trust them to do what they say. Another element is that of self-disclosure and feedback. We might call that transparency. And so this is about giving information about ourselves, letting people know how we're thinking, what's important to us, why we're trying to do something, what our expectations are and what we need, as much as giving people feedback about how they are working in the relationship. So from a sales point of view, it could be saying to a customer, look, you're not helping me help you. You're not doing what we said we would do. You're not really contributing to the relationship as we set it up. And that's tough for a lot of salespeople to do. It seems counterintuitive. Customer is king. but they're not necessarily, we're partners, we're equals. And if people need to know things, we need to be strong enough to feed that back to them. We need to be comfortable with change. Salespeople are change agents. We sell change. We're getting people to do stuff different. That's what we're there to do. So we've got to be comfortable with change ourselves. How can we be getting somebody to do something different if we're not willing to do it ourselves? It's not really a stance that we can take. So we need to be comfortable with change ourselves. We need to understand it and understand how people go through change, to recognize where they are and to adapt our approach, again, to help them with it. Remember that status quo, doing nothing, is one of our biggest competitors as a salesperson. So we've got to be able to understand and talk credibly and knowledgeably about change and how it takes place. And the last element, or one of the other element, is future orientation. So it's about common goals, it's about working towards a vision, it's about understanding what that is and making decisions together based on that. Not looking backwards, but thinking about what it is we're trying to achieve, where we want to go. Doesn't mean that we don't take any account of the past, but if we focus too much on that, we'll be missing the point in that we're trying to move things forward. So the framework I use to bring this all together is the value framework. So this is a way in which salespeople can take the thinking from before, take all good sales best practice that hasn't gone away, won't go away, how they can take the partnering skills and really bring these together. That's what the value framework does for us. Broadly, it's about validating the customer. So it's about understanding that potential for a relationship, whether there's somebody that we want to work with. I believe very much that it takes two to tango. So we've got to look at not just whether they qualify on a bunch of kind of objective criteria, but on more subjective, are they the kind of people we'd want to work with? Will they respond to this approach? It makes a lot of sense to do that. We then align, we work out what it is we could do for them. So this is about the homework that we do to think about where can we really start to bring value? Who's who? Who's going to be part of making that decision? We know that stakeholders are increasing. So how can we align ourselves and work out, are we going to be talking to everybody's needs, everybody's concerns, everyone's wants? So we can start to bring this together when we leverage that into the interactions that we have, into the approaches that we make, how we run sales meetings, how we run calls, how we talk to customers and interact to try to bring this all together. For success with that, it means we can move forward, we advance, get a commitment to the next stage. So we need to underpin what our proposals are. Now we need to back up, we need to prove what it is that we're saying, why it'll work for them. This is where implementation or even mutual action plans come in very, very useful, because it shows that we've got a way ahead. We're working together to achieve those particular outcomes. This should all work well to get us to the point where we can evolve the whole relationship. We can keep moving forward. We can keep working together. We can deliver on the outcomes. We can deliver on the results that we've promised. Value framework helps us bring this thinking together. So that's a very brief overview and quite a lot of stuff in there, I think, really about how we can be more collaborative. So it's understanding the past, bringing together partnering skills and kind of having a framework or a way and a systematic thought process in trying to deliver that for customers. It's the ethos that we need. It's that mindset. To go with a partnering mindset makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that was the secret or the idea that I wanted to share with you. So I will just wrap up now with a couple of the quick fire questions that I was given. So let me think, what were those? So favorite book? Selling Through Partnering Skills. Of course it is, my first book. Why would it not be my favorite? But I'm not sure that was how the question was being asked. So I would say The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters, or Professor Steve Peters he is now. Brilliant book about how the brain works. Really gives a simplified model to help us understand why we do certain things and how we can manage that better. It makes a lot of sense for a salesperson to read that. It makes a lot of sense for anybody to read that. Favorite habit is going to the gym in the morning. Yeah, I like to go to the gym in the morning. Gets me up, gets me awake, gets me thinking, gets endorphins flowing. Usually gives me a chance to chat to some of the guys, a bit of fun, and to set the day up. Really, yeah, that's why I'm a morning person anyway. It just helps me get even more out of that part of the day. Favorite app or tool? Rocky AI. So Rocky is a conversational chatbot, which I use for morning and evening reflections. So actually, before I go to the gym, I'll click open Rocky, and what the AI does in this case, it asks questions. So rather than you ask it something, it gives an answer, it asks you, and so it can be used just to stimulate thinking, first thing in the morning, and then in the night to capture what good things have happened. And reflection is a great way to develop self. Favorite sales channel? Zoom. Yeah, I like Zoom. It's great for delivering training, but also it's great to have lots of meetings with people very effectively, very efficiently. I think you can do great things virtually. Kind of proves it. That's why I'm here. But no, I think Zoom is great. It's really helping us become super effective. And there are ways in which we can use it in clever ways to collaborate and bring people together online when we know how. What was the biggest success? Well, every time I make a difference to a salesperson's career, that's a success for me. And that might sound a bit trite, but honestly, that's why I do this stuff. If I can make a difference, if I can help somebody, if I can move them forward, get them to be more effective, that's a success for me. So yeah, all of those are big successes. What's my biggest failure? Not writing a book when it was first suggestion. So I had an opportunity really when I was it's my first training job. So yeah, good few years ago, 20 odd years ago, I could have written one. I was encouraged to. I didn't for a number of reasons. And I wish I had. It would have made quite a difference. But look, I got around to it eventually. So yeah, it's all cool. How do I stay motivated? Rocky. So yeah, the app, first thing in the morning, it's getting me thinking, it's getting my brain in gear. Going to the gym, getting endorphins flowing, feeling better about myself, feeling fit, being physically healthy, I think makes a massive difference. I regularly check in with an accountability group of people who are doing similar kind of things to me, and we keep ourselves on track. I have partners that I work with on a variety of things, so that keeps us going. I use coaches. Of course, use coaches. Got to use coaches. Coaching is the best way, I believe, to develop and to keep yourself going in the right direction. What advice would I give to my 20-year-old self? Don't try and drink that pint upside down. Didn't go well. But anyway, that's a different story, probably not for here. I think I'd probably go back to write that book when you get given the chance, because it was only like a few years afterwards, 26, 27, I could have done it. So yeah, listen to when you get that advice and then take that opportunity. That was the one that you were offered. So yeah, be open to opportunities is probably a broader way of capturing that particular thing. So yeah, I do hope you found this useful. Please connect with me if you want to. I'm very happy to answer more questions. I'm happy to share more information. Certainly happy to help you get your head around PQ and how you can use partnering skills. So yeah, and thank you for inviting me to speak at the Sales Secret Summit in 2021.